Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. Another most special episode of today's show for a few reasons. One, it's young Abigail's 17th birthday. I wouldn't normally have done a show, but I had the opportunity to do a show that's thematically tight with my friend, quite frankly. And this is the second reason that today's episode is special, is because it's going to be a show with a friend on a daughter's birthday about a theme that is near to my heart and has been increasingly near to my heart. And I think it's near to your heart too, Frank. Getting old. Getting old sucks. Getting old blanks. Whatever people think about it, it's an inevitability. Father Time has an undefeated record. All this stuff I've heard Charles Barkley say over the years. It's fun and a little bit scary to talk about, but there's no one better to do it with for honest conversations than my friend Frank from Quite Frankly. So this is why I feel honored to have you on today on Abby's birthday, Frank.
Well, happy birthday, Abby. And I'm so happy I got to meet her and the whole crew a couple of years ago when we were, I can't believe it's been a couple of years, but I'm happy it happened at least. And I'm sure there's more in the future, but we got to hang out in our at a local park that I grew up in, that I did a lot of baseball coaching in, and then I got to give you guys a nice New York pizza to take along the way, and it was wonderful to meet the whole crew. But again, that was 2 years now, and you can't blink anymore. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's always been this way, that it speeds up just because time and your perception of it just warps as you put not just years on, but decades on. Like you think about those first 10 years of your life. I remember it being like 1995, and I'm around 10 years old. And to think back to 1993 seemed like going back 3 decades, because of course you're every year at that point is 1/10 of your entire life. And so a year is gargantuan amount of time. But now I believe, at least what it seems to be, every memory I have is 20 years old now. And it is sobering. It really is.
It's frightening. And that's why it's legitimately frightening, like not trying to be funny saying it that way. Like getting old, it's weird and scary. And by the way, I think hopefully we can have another kind of whole crew hangout in September. But you have your extravaganza show, celebratory, Quite Frankly show coming up in September, and I would sincerely like to be there for it. You have to do hosting, so we won't be able to hang out as much one-on-one, but I'd still like to make it with the whole crew. Everyone knows that when I travel with the whole fam, which is part of what I want to talk about today, being a married guy, but not a normie. But I would just address what you said real fast about the subjective proportionality of time, which is weird. It does seem to change the passage of time, its relative speed with each decade. Like you said, why is it that the passage of time with regard to your proportional life is the measure of how you mark it? I don't know why, but that is it. What you said about in your single digits, everything is just a much smaller fraction, is a much larger fraction of your life relatively. Then your teens go by still kind of slow. 20s start to speed up. 30s fly by. I'm thinking of the Billy Crystal speech in City Slickers, where he talks about this. Ford, you make a little money for the first time in your life in your 30s. And then you're like, what happened in my 20s? And the next thing you know, you hit 40. He goes all the way to 80, but next thing you know, you hit 40, and that's for the first time in your life, you officially, maybe at 38 or 39, I think Billy Crystal's 39 at the beginning of City Slickers, you're not looking forward to your birthday anymore. And I was always one of these guys that looked forward to my birthdays. I don't think you mind me saying this, right? You recently turned 40. I'm a little bit ahead of you. I'm 44, but did you mind just talking about that a little bit? Because to me, at 39, it was the first time where I ever wanted to pump the brakes. And because I always liked my birthday. I never pretended, like with false humility, like, oh no, don't celebrate me. I always just liked the attention from family and loved ones and wife and kids. But you try to pump the brakes and it's like you find out it's a fake brake on one of those cars that don't really drive. Like you can't really pump the brakes. Like it just keeps going. And I'd never wanted to pump the brakes before because I kind of wanted to be 30 when I was 29. I wanted to be 20 when I was 19. What do you think about that, man?
Well, I would. There's a bunch of places I would go with this. I don't know. When I think about 40, which was just in April, I think about the milestone birthdays that I had been blessed to reach, because ultimately, there's so many other things that come along with getting older. For me, it's always been about reflecting and contemplating mortality. I love the attention from my family and friends. It's never really been about, it's been a long time, maybe since my single digits and all that stuff, that I would be concerned about what I was going to receive as a gift.
Yeah.
It's more so about, hey, who's going to, I love organizing, and give me a reason to go through the entire Rolodex of contacts that I have to say, you guys want to come by for coffee? Yeah. I mean, just give me a reason to get everybody over for coffee and cake. It's all I care about.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, that would be it. I mean, I remember 1990, if you just want to talk about me as a person, in 1990, I remember being in the back seat of my mother's car thinking about how big the number 5 was and how grown up it was going to be to finally get out of the booster seat. And I, a few years later, I was struck by the realization that at age 9, I would never again be single digits. Like, I actually had a moment of reflection in 1995 that I would never be single digits again. And that was just so huge. Now, I mean, I was, obviously you become a 13-year-old, and now I'm a teenager, and you start getting your first summer jobs and all that other stuff. But when it comes to 40, it was a lot different. It was a lot different from the standpoint that I looked around. I mean, Lauren and I, we got married in our 30s. We moved in together. There were reasons to be excited for every new plateau, and the 30s brought professional independence, as you said, fatherhood, the current studio location that I'm in, as well as I don't know, bearing witness to all kinds of history being made and being conscious of about it, instead of just having the world go on around you and you're just focused on your little child existence. And then came 40, and I feel strong. I feel physically strong, mentally sharp. I feel energetic. I feel full of life. I've got love. I've got vigor. I'm brimming with new ideas. But 40 is different in one major way, and it was the first time that I heard a phrase that I've seen you use a lot over the years, Tim, and that is prayer and penitence. And I heard a call to prayer and penitence on the eve of my 40th birthday, because there was an unspoken knowing that this was the beginning of a great and glorious run that will, end in the passing of my torch to some other generation, one that we were never meant to hold on to forever, that torch. And on Sunday, March 31st, Lauren surprised me with a gathering of friends. I thought we were going to have a nice, chill 31st together, my birthday being on the 2nd. So that Sunday before was, just going to be, the only day that I really get a chance to chill out. I said, well, I was thinking about all of the movies we might be able to watch and all that stuff. And Lauren surprised me with this huge gathering of friends, and people just started coming in waves. And whereas I did my fair share of socializing, I often found myself quietly just absorbing the room and admiring just the generations of people who were there. I was missing those who were gone and contemplating my place among them all. And I think every man and woman can most accurately measure their true wealth in a setting like that, when you account for all the people that you could count on if you were ever in a pinch, or if you ever wanted to just share the room with somebody. And And I think that's just that's it. Perspective can be a bitch sometimes, but it's just that looking around at who's there and where time, as you said, is continuing to march. And so there was something different about turning 40 just in perspective, but nothing physical, that's for sure. Nothing like that. Although we can talk about hypochondria, because I'd love to talk about that at some point.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. It was a change in perspective for me from 39 to 40, just because that this is every 20 years is the changing of hands, a new generation, and you see everybody that was once a young, virile titan of your past that is now slipping into retirement years, and some slipping into senility, and it's you really just have to be prepared in ways for things that you never actually contemplated.
Do you? I mean, we're friends, and I know you do because I watch your show, and more than that, we talk behind the scenes. But you have a nostalgic streak, like I do. Nostalgia can be creative, productive. It can be, and it's multifarious. It strikes in different forms, different times. It can make you write great music, or it can make you have a great idea for a show, or it can sort of just be, for me, other times cripplingly sentimental and make you sad. And as much as I get that way with my friends, man, with my family as a father, it's tough because I don't know. I don't think it was until I became 40 that I started looking at I was never a guy that put athletes or that put actors on a pedestal. It was more athletes growing up. But you see the faces change of these older people in the movies, and you go back and watch Ocean's 11, and even Brad Pitt, if you've seen him in anything recently, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, even that guy is aging, and he's Brad Pitt. I watched Ocean's 11 last night as it happened, and it's like, it's wild to be Googling in your phone. I only started doing this when I was 40. Like, when was so-and-so born? And you start comparing your age to other people's, and you're like, so-and-so was, Harrison Ford was how many years old in Raiders of the Lost Ark? How many years old in whatever? And you kind of feel good if they still look young when they're old. It's like, 44 ain't so bad.
What, Tim, it's funny. When my family gets together on Sunday nights, we do a lot of, we either do one of two things together after dessert and all that other stuff. We get together, we either put on a Hallmark film, because there's tons of movies on Hallmark, or Great American Family, and we just rip them to shreds. and we have such a great time. But it's on some nights where we just put on another movie. Like, let's say we just put on Moonstruck or something else like that. Or we're watching old episodes of, the Ed Sullivan Show, and, everybody's just watching. We're looking at all it is a room full of people watching the television and then going to their phones to see who's dead, how they died, how old were they, what was it? And it's absolutely hilarious. It's just the checking of ages and comparing. I wanted to throw that in there.
No, I mean,
I do that so much.
Yeah.
So much. I'm like, some movies, I'm like, every single person in this movie is dead.
Yeah. And it's wild. It's wild. It's like a skeleton crew on a ghost ship when you're watching one of the older things. And I don't know what it is on my phone. I probably just need to not be a boomer and change the notification settings. But all I ever get notifications for from major news networks is when a major rock musician or a major actor dies. I'm like, is there no more relevant news in the world? But it hits in a different way after 40, doesn't it? I mean, after around 40 or after 40.
Well, I think, yeah. Well, I've been, like I said, I've been kind of riding this wave around my mid 30s onward. Again, it's a change of perspective. I have something for you. I didn't know where I was going to put this into one of my shows. I still might do it. And it was a comment that I saw on an Instagram reel that really got me. and it was just some guy talking about his little slice of heaven, and he's a father, and he's looking back on what he believes was just the peak of everything. And I saw this this comment here from an R. Rodriguez 1513, and they said, I told my wife the other day, heaven for me would be driving with all of you in the car, my wife and kids. We'd have a destination, but we'd never actually get there. It would be just us stuck on the best road trip, listening to good music, snacking on our favorite road trip snacks,
Yeah.
and enjoying the views together forever. And I said, God, you know, it when I saw that, and it only makes sense after a little while, because you don't even have to be a parent, I guess, to understand that. I mean, to even want to just be the kid in the back seat again and go to, I don't know, one of your old summers when you were a kid, and you're again just being with people who are now advanced in age or just gone all together.
Yeah.
And that's where nostalgia really gets you. And I think it also is a pathway to contemplating immortality and heaven as well. Oh man, things like that has led me further and further under the wing of God than anything else. And I mean, there's plenty to be said about that too. But you know, these are the reflections that really get you sometimes.
Yeah, you mean like that's what I was asking you, because I know you're a nostalgic cat like me. I don't know. This is why I don't like the 4 temperaments. I'm like 3 of them. I'm like a choleric, sanguine, nostalgic, or whatever, and I'm everything but phlegmatic. I mean, it gets you in the grief bone, right? I mean, sometimes it's not just creative and generative. That's where I've been stuck in this mode. I don't know if the parish orphans and retrogrades out there can see, some of them have, but I've been in this mode for about 15 months, where I just can't get out of the like weepy, like I'm like a bitch. You know, it's
not true.
It's like that part in Dumb and Dumber when they're watching the commercial about I think it's a telecommunications commercial, and it's like, he never calls anymore, and they're both crying and just blowing their nose with $100 bills. I've been a bitch for the last like 15 months, and I'm just like, I'm thinking about my kids and my wife. What's wrong with me, dude?
But I this was in 2023, so Aurora was 2.5 years old. She was, you know, approaching 3. Now in September, she's going to be 5. But even by then, it doesn't matter, you know. And I'm always at the mercy of God. I'd love to have 3 more of Aurora. Whatever He sees fit would be wonderful. But this is already enough for me to just have been totally turned inside out. And by 2023, you want to talk about emotional? Like, you know, I just. The small little things that she would do, or even just at the end of the night, if I'm just in the living room by myself and I'm just going through the pictures I took of the day or something like that, and I would feel almost like, man, I can't even talk. I can't think about my daughter for too long.
I know.
Without, and you've got what, 15,000 children, and I have the one, and I can't think of her for too long. And I started saying to myself, okay, I'm calling my doctor, and I swear I did this. I'm calling my doctor. I had a physical that was coming up. I had to do my physical anyway. And I said, you know, it's been a couple of years since I took blood. I'm getting everything tested, including my testosterone. I had to get my testosterone checked because I wanted to make sure it wasn't something biochemical. And no, everything was totally fine. So
it has dropped around 40, and I'm like, is this new strain of like slap a pair of like memories on me? I'm a woman the last 15 months. If I think about my kids, and I'm 7, right? You met? Did he meet Penny? When Penny was real small? Pen's like, she was like a little bean then, but 6 girls, 1 boy. You worry about each of them in different ways. And you just start thinking about not being around. Like Abby is obvious, you know, Abigail, birthday Abby. Love you, Abby. 17 years old today. Is, you know, had like 5 brain surgeries, half her brain basically removed 5 years ago. You know, we were friends long before that, actually. You know, it's just obvious. She's in a wheelchair. She needs me. I lift her everywhere. You know, I got a hernia. I have to have repaired because I'm always lifting her. I have to lift her into the car.
Pray for Tim. He has surgery this Monday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
And being a hypochondriac, even like a hernia surgery, I'm like, again, bitch about that. But I just start, if I think about my kids, it's just what you said. I think about Abby. I'm worried about, man, what would they do without me? And it's not self-importance. It's Steph can't lift Abby. Like, how do you get it? We go around a lot as a family in the car. I'm the only one that can lift her. Like Maggie, the 14-year-old, I worry about, you know, she's really clever. You worry about your clever kid in a different way. The twins, I worry about them in a different way. You know, Miriam, I always just feel, well, there's one kid you have that they're great, but you just always feel bad for him. Little Mira, I always feel bad for. My boy, I worry about him. I'm like not only his dad, but his bro. I'm his brother. He gets bored. He just, half the time when I'm doing a show, he's just in here because he doesn't want to hang out with the girls and their neighbor friend. If I go to hunting, he just wants to go, even if it just means sitting in a shooting house for 2 or 3 hours. He's just there. I'm just worried, what would they do without me? You know? And I'm like, I told you, man, it's bad. It's like a runaway train in my freaking head.
Oh, well, you know, when it comes to hypochondria and death,
yeah,
I've contacted you about this, and I guess that this comes together with a few things that I've been contemplating a lot lately too. And that is also, I don't know when this has happened in other generations. We'll get around to it, but people in their indestructible teens and 20s who don't, you know, for the most part, they don't, those are usually people's agnostic to atheist years.
Right.
And they're indestructible. I'm never going to slow down. I'm, you know, full of vigor and testosterone and whatever, and the whole world's ahead of me, and I'm never going to get old and all that stuff. Obviously, things change, and maybe just out of just fright of knowing that you are mortal, that you start contemplating, if not for any other reason, just the hope that there is something after death, because this worldly existence that we thought was heaven was the only the highest it can get, with its highs, the high of highs and lows of lows. We say, oh, heaven and hell is here, it's what you make it, all that new age stuff. But I want to get into that a little bit here too, because it ties into things like you know, having personal crisis. Like over the last year and a half, especially when it comes to the health of people who are close to me, there have been some real scary moments. Some of them are not even totally resolved, but at least there's been enough clarity to be able to move on and get functional with it. But sometimes I will be in a situation where, especially late at night, I could be, I don't know, brought down nearly to my knees in fear of what's going on, because with all your considerations, children who need parents, all the types of things of doing things as a parent, or even beyond parenthood, or not. There are a number of reasons why somebody would feel that if your life got cut short, I'm not ready. I want to be totally ready to go when it happens. I'm not trying to be immortal. I just want to be totally ready to go. I want everything in order, and I want people to be taken care of. And
I know, you know.
But here's my question, and I brought this up with you in the past too. I asked you, Tim, does this constitute a crisis of faith? Because if I am truly in the pocket with my faith, and I truly believe what I believe on days where the sun is shining and I don't have anything that's really weighing down on me, and I feel that everything is in order and balanced, on the days where, you know, you say, well, the real make of a team is how they act when they're losing. You know, it's easy for a team to have good camaraderie when they're on a 15-game winning streak and they're at the top of the division and everything's looking hunky-dory. But what happens when you are really struggling, or you're in the basement, and especially when we start talking about life and death? that really worried me, because I realized that, and I brought this into the confession booth as well for a lot of counsel on it, because I realized that in times of immense stress, instead of leaning into the rosary, instead of being assured by everything that I was unshakable on, in good months or good years or good days, I was instead relying on Grok or Chat GPT. Hey, what's going on here? And I felt like I started saying, like, am I breaking the first commandment here? I have thrown myself at looking for answers in search engines to try to give myself a nice night's sleep to be able to get through the night.
Yeah.
Is this an indictment of my own faith? And that's something I would never think about in my 20s and 30s.
Of course.
And I don't know. That's just something that's something that's come up for me a lot lately. That's a big question as far as crisis of faith and what does it mean?
Well, Steph and I are laughing because it's so much. I mean, I got a million flaws. Crisis of faith, like faith in God, like the certitude of God's existence and that he's good. That's not something I struggle with anymore. I did not even struggle with it in my early 20s and late teens. Being a cradle Catholic, I not only struggled with it, but I only didn't struggle with it, but I would have told you I was confident there was nothing then. Now that goes back to just what happened in the church in the late 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s when I was growing up. And, but learning what I've learned, knowing what I've known, having some transcendent experiences, I can tell you honestly, and I think I told you then, that's not what I struggle with. What I struggle with is, and I'm not a hypocrite there. I'm confident, like there is a God. It's the Christian God. I'm confident that the sacraments work. I have this real issue with what's called a struggle with the confidence in God's goodness, where it's stupid. It's flat retardation. Where I'm like, I'm extremely close with Steph, and I'm like, it bothers me. Again, like a biatch, because I only hear women say this, but I'm like this, that we're not married in heaven. This is mental retardation of a gargantuan elephantine female proportions, because when you're in heaven, there's nothing you want for, and I can't square that circle. I'm like, I also am not assured of heaven, and I'm certainly not sure I'm going. That should be the one thing that really gives us anxiety. Just getting there, getting our wives there, getting our kids there. Everything else, it's the pearl of great price. Everything else, dies away. But I have these stupid moments where I'm like, if a life cut short, I get worried, and I get worried in ways that I could rationalize, justify as a good Catholic, like, well, because that makes it that much harder when the dad's not around, because the dad is the priest, prophet, king of the home. Kids don't want to listen to their mom, particularly on religion. It effeminizes the religion and all this stuff. That's real. But a lot of it's just, it would be weird, even if you're one of the blessed in heaven, in the church triumphant. I always felt, and this is another just stupid failure to trust in God's confidence that I do have, even though I'm 100% certain of the Christian God. It's weird. I imagine the blessed up in heaven being like, well, how long in earthly life did you get? And again, they don't have their bodies back yet. You'll get your bodies back at the general judgment. And I think you'll feel a little less deprived. But between the particular and general judgment, I imagine even if you're in perfect heaven, my stupid brain can't fathom, doesn't have the categories for the ones that had like a fuller, 80-year lifespan, not feeling a little bit like they have bragging rights, or the ones that had the life cut short. Aquinas died when he was like 49, feeling a little bit ripped off, even though they succeeded the whole point of life. And I realize it simultaneously that's stupid, but A prime. At the same time, I do just want to bargain for, out of my failure to have confidence in God's goodness totally, I want to bargain for, like, please, oh Lord, just I don't even have to have the 80 years. Just please get me at least to my youngest daughter's 20th or 21st birthday, and then I can check out. You know what I mean? Just to make sure that they're all right. And that's simultaneously very, very normal. I'm not condemning it as like one of my worst vices, but I get obsessed over it, and that becomes one of my worst vices. And at the same time, it's like, well, God has a plan, and he has, through his grace, a way to take care of everyone. But I just can't process it, man.
I just had a friend who was, I attended his funeral on his 40th birthday. He last December, we didn't know about it until maybe about a month ago. Last December, went to the doctor, wasn't feeling well, pancreatic cancer. And it turned out he only had about 6 months left. And his funeral was his 40th birthday. So I'm sitting there in a church that we grew up in. It was our parish church. Our school was a Catholic school, and we were in a church that I don't know how many assemblies we all had been together. And I'm thinking about all this stuff. He got married on his deathbed just to be able to have been married. And I think about it. And of course, the cynic will take that as a way to say, well, that's the way you write the whole damn thing off. That because things like that happen, and where is God and all of that. And I've long since moved past that. So I think that's ridiculous. It flies in the face of any form of free will, and of course, that everybody brings into the world, whether it be on a corporate level, and what kind of products and what kind of ways that the atmosphere. I mean, you think about how toxic the atmosphere is alone. There's just so much there. I've had these conversations with friends of mine who go to church every week, and they say, when something like this happens to one of our own, I do have a few hours of childlike temper tantrums. I understand, and it's tough. But I always pray for discernment and strength. Now, I never ask for somebody to put the training wheels back on, but I will tell you this. When it comes to getting older, I don't know when this would happen. Maybe perhaps in older generations, like our grandparents and great grandparents, perhaps it was just something that people never lost a lot of contact with. Our parents, that the baby boomer generation and the subsequent generations afterwards, they essentially had a lot of religious ties burned out of them, and it was just one of those things where many of us had to just find our way back through any kind of personal revelation or experiencing the world, and however the hell you found your way back to something. That it's interesting to see how that develops for a person. I don't know in the past when people started taking control, more hands-on control of their own spiritual life, and realizing that this is a matter of life and death, and it's not just something we do out of boredom on a Sunday or a Saturday night or something like that, but it actually really is about preparation and being able to go out in the world with a discernible or a significant level of spiritual armor on. But I had just over the last 5, 6, however, I don't know, actually, probably, I don't know when was our first broadcast together? I forget.
Oh man, 7 years ago or so.
Yeah, we might be getting closer to 10. But
yeah, it might be 8. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails just from the talks that you and I have had about how those conversations have sparked people who were either living agnostically as atheists, or if they were Catholics that were having a reversion, that our conversations had brought people back running to some sort of life in the church. And just recently, again, I had another one of those really amazing experiences, and this is especially hits home for me because who am I? I'm incredibly flawed, and everybody struggles with whatever the hell they got going on, but at least now I'm always evaluating myself, And for me to have this experience with my buddy Christian, he I don't know if he was ever just outright atheist or just didn't care, but he lives in New York City. And around 2021, you know, his whole world's getting, you know, turned upside down living in the city. And his job, he started getting pestered by people at his job to go out and take certain shots to be able to go to work and to remain employed. And it was at this time that he got in touch with me. He said, "Hey, you know, we're commiserating about what's going on." He says, "Yeah, things over here are really bad, and they want me to take this shot, but you know, I just have a personal objection to it, and I don't want to touch it. So I'm applying for a religious exemption." And I said, "Well, you know, man," because I know he was, you know, he didn't have anything to do with an actual religion. And I said, "You know, man, that's good. I'm glad, and I hope you get it. But," and I reminded him, I said, "You know, if you get that exemption, you got to hold up your end of the deal." I said, you got to go back to church. And that's where we kind of left it. Well, last week I was at the studio and we were going in this, my friend texted me. I forgot what the hell, what even led to this, but he had said, forget what it was. It was, I don't know. Anyway, it got around to the point where I started realizing, I said, wait a second. I wonder if he actually did. I wonder if he went back to church, if he held up his end of the deal. And I straight up asked him. I asked him at one point, I said, "Hey man, so did you start going back to church? Did you do, well, here it is right here. Hold on. He sent me something. He said, "Hey Frank," he has a band. He said, "Check out our new album. Wouldn't you have a moment?" It's a concept album. I don't come right out and say it, but it's a lot that I had to deal with when I was living through COVID and finding myself in the middle of that battle of the state versus God. And I made it for all of us who were treated like shit. I said, "Oh, awesome. Is it on Spotify? Send me the link." He says, "Yeah." He sent it to me. And then I had to ask us, you know, this is personal stuff, but I had to ask him. I said, "Christian, have you begun to pray the rosary?" And he says, "Yes." He says, "Yes." And I have a piece of paper on my mantle. My mom drew out for me all the prayers and all that stuff. And I got to tell you, man, I am still bragging about this to people. This is a week now. And I don't know why I feel so much joy on behalf of my friend. It's not, it feels as if it happened to me.
Yeah.
And here we are again in our late 30s, 40s, mid 40s. And I don't know if that is something that used to be the case for past generations when they start taking it seriously. If it's more so one of those things where in retirement you really look at yourself in the mirror and you see an old person looking back at you and see your 60s and 70s and 80s, and you start clinging to any kind of life raft and however the hell you get to the party, fine. But I feel like there is a lot more people, young people, who have been forced just to look at society and realize that the battle of life and death is actually right now. And I think that there's a lot of people getting started a lot earlier in their return.
Well, the big 2024 study came out. Zoomer males have like flocked back specifically to the Catholic Church, and Protestants are leaving for either Eastern Orthodoxy or Roman Catholicism. We're in the midst of a great reawakening. I don't know what the hell happened with the boomers, where they never had that, even in their late 30s or 40. That, mine was late 20s that I got the message. But, we've talked about many times. But the only boomers that seemed to get it in large waves were the women. And that is partly what messed up the millennials, is if in 95% of the religious homes that were wellspring boomers, offspring, whatever, Gen X or millennials. Gen X is a weird short generation. If it was just the woman generated trying to surrogate for the men who would not be the priest, prophet, king of the home, it turned us off. And that's why what you said earlier is so true, that we had to go seemingly find it on our own, from whether or not your mom was or wasn't a decent, Catholic, it didn't really matter because the dads weren't. So that's really the metric. Pew Research has all these staggering numbers. It's the dads. But I tell you, man, like we're in the midst of a religious reawakening, and I don't want the Zoomers to miss the message that you don't want to. I want to keep coupled the message that it's like most people aren't called to be priests. That's really, really special. And they are called not only to return to church and confession, that's a huge part of it, and the rosary, that's a huge part of it. But also, if you don't feel called to be a priest, you should be looking to get married. And that's another thing I wanted to say about being 40, to take a sort of pivot out of the hypochondria. If I don't pivot from the hypochondria, I'll get stuck there forever.
And that's why, honestly, like your logo is like the skull. It's like Catholics, we have this like love-fear relationship with death. Like you see Catholic art, there's skulls everywhere. And a lot of people like gave you a hard time about the skull stuff, but it's like, it's embracing your fear. It's like, and that's what the logo is above you. Like the skulls and the logo, they represent the skulls in the Capuchin crypt in Rome, where it's like these monks, they literally put their skulls and their bodies on display. The whole church is erected out of these actual skulls and bodies to remind Catholics. And there's a big plaque at the end of this tour that you go through this church, and it's right above like 3 monks in the hoods, and it says, "What you are now we once were, and what we are now you will be." And that's what's on our logo. I mean, that's we over here have like an obsession and like almost like maybe too much with like memento mori, but it's true. It's a beautiful thing for Catholics.
Yeah, I know, and I know if people on the outside would know it's a little morbid. I said, well, you know what? It's not unnatural though, and that's the whole thing. It's actually it's just an uncensored way of talking about the natural order of things. You can doll it up, you can sugarcoat the tack or anything else like that. But when we talk about birth, life, and death, and transition, and all that stuff, the soul is fluid, but the body is left behind to rot. And it's not you. The moment you shake free of that mortal coil, that's not you. And that's I think that a little bit more thought on that is, some people would call it morbid, but I there's definitely a humbling and a little bit more sobering, much needed sobriety we need in this in the world, and we're getting it in a number of ways. It's just that some people are served up a nice big helping of reality, and they don't have anything to fall back on as far as a faith base. You think about everything that we see on the internet. You say, okay, well, Tim has the skull in his rules for retrogrades and all this other thing. Oh, that's morbid. And then, of course, you spend 20 minutes on Twitter and you see enough shit that in past lives would be, enough to give somebody PTSD on the battlefield. And it is, the entire world is being exposed to just, wanton death all over the place and craziness. But the real question is, what do you have to fall back on to be able to process the carnage that does go around us, and then to be able to balance it out with an abundance of beauty. So I don't see why, if you don't have a little bit of a balance of the light, the dark, and just the unashamed truth in between, which is life and death. It could be, is it a bad thing, a good thing, or something that's just indifferent? We die and we decompose. Our bodies do, but that doesn't have to be morbid. It can just be the way it is. And if you balance it all out, I think that everybody is a lot better off, because otherwise, then, just like in so many other instances, you become that washing machine that is in spin cycle, but all of the blankets have made it to one side of the machine, and it's just you're just bouncing across the basement floor, and you need that balance. And unfortunately, death is part of the balancing act.
Yeah, and it's even even weirder is, but makes sense and does balance things out. God can do it far better than us. Aquinas talks about that you can't even talk because a human being is a rational, corporeal substrate of a rational nature. So we're never going to be, you can't call a person a disembodied spirit in between that particular and general judgment. So Aquinas says, like, Lazarus doesn't, you can't really even call him Lazarus except equivocally until the general judgment and he gets his body back. Like all of the souls, the blessed souls, don't have all their memories because memories are bodily until they get their heavenly body at the end of all time. So even the ones that made it to heaven are kind of just sort of sleepily, dreamily contemplating the beatific vision or whatever right now. But until they have their bodies back, like, we're not angels. We're not disembodied spirits. And that's not how it's going to be in heaven. We're going to get our perfected body. And that's what it is to be human. So the corruption of the body it's really natural to be fearful of the corruption of the body while you live and the turbo corruption of the body as you die. And that's why I think turning 40 is such a moment to hit the hill and to be, quote unquote, over the hill. I would say this to pivot, because like I said, it's a pit I can fall down, the hypochondria stuff, and not be able to get out. What I think we can say that is maybe exemplary, you and I, Frank, and I wanted to pick your brain on a stream, that's exemplary is, like, the Zoomers need to not uncouple the religious reawakening, particularly to the Catholic Church, and not hating the body. Like, don't be an incel. Like, go find, it's tough to find a good woman now because of what's happened. You know, that's a big part of my platform is sort of Catholic red pill stuff, or Catholic red pill equivalent. But there are still good women. Go get one, make her your wife. It's not, having a wife and kids is not just for NPCs, even though that's kind of how it was by and large with the boomers and even Gen X. It's not just for normies. There are guys that are very young at heart, young in spirit, like you or like me, that have a wife and have procreated the way we're called to do and populate the pews for the priests, who are really, really few and far between. They're the ones called not to reproduce. But if you're called to be a layman, sacramentally speaking, you're called to reproduce, and you don't have to be some boring oldster the way we saw it with the boomers and even Gen X. You know, like, you're a dynamic guy with these concerns. I'm a dynamic guy. And honestly, I think that, we were also talking about this on the phone, I think that makes it tougher to be a non-NPC out with a house and a wife and kids, and to not be old at spirit the way the boomers were. They got a job, got a wife, got a kid, and became 60, you know, on their 29th birthday or whatever it was. When that doesn't happen to you, I think it was easier for them to age, I would guess, than us, because we're you know what I mean? We're not normies.
Yeah, and you can't have this conversation without talking about the world that baby boomers were born into, and then again, we're talking about subsequent generations from that. It's easy to take baby boomers, that generation, and use it as almost like a year zero. Because of what kind of a mark that was left on the country, both geopolitically, financially, and then just as a government after the conclusion of both world wars. We were not in America. We're still very patriotic. We still had the American zeal and all that stuff. But as far as the American government after the New Deal, it was a socialist monstrosity. And you go that those 30 years after the war into the 70s and all that stuff, when we start getting into more of those separation of church and state movements to get in and centralize education and using money to be able to indoctrinate people. That's not even to talk about all the counterculture movements that were going on in the streets to shift all of our focus away from things, from values that are absolutely imperative for a successful society to adopt, to have any kind of longevity. I mean, seriously, I mean, and it doesn't, it's not any mistake or any coincidence that this was able, that society, and of course 2,000 years worth of religion was able to be, you know, morphed and degraded in only like 60 to 70 years once we started dealing with mass communication technology and everything else. It was just so much easier to be subversive in the 20th century onward. And you'll just look at where we are. It's like, how the hell could the same kind of mentality and traditional, you know, the traditions, I should say, that built up and preserved the Western civilization in the face of outside invasion and every other kind of blight, how can that just be so effectively dismantled in a couple of generations? And when you think about the cultural issues that and the cultural environment that people come up in, but also the financial environment that people that come in up in, and also just the financial the philosophies, economic philosophies that took away our, you know, that one more Keynesian than anything else, and started talking about central planning and everything. There's so much less freedom there. It's just, you know, to tell somebody that is in their mid-20s right now, hey, get married, settle down, buy yourself a house, have your, you know, encourage your wife to stay at home with the kids, to raise them, perhaps even develop a homeschool curriculum to teach them, to keep them outside of one system or another. It is so much easier said than done because of everything that was designed to be put in our way to make all of that literally untenable, if for no other reason than a financial reason. They wanted to make sure, the central planners wanted to make sure that it was so hard for people to be able to live outside of their influence. And, you know, I know what's up against everybody. And it's really started with the so-called greatest generation who elected a damn socialist 4 times.
I know.
You know? So, I know. So yeah, you know, boomers get beat up a lot on only because they were born and came up in an incredibly prosperous time post-war, and then from there we've only had surpluses diminish and things just get squeezed off until there's almost nothing left. And now even Social Security is being, you know, we have take loans out to pay everybody's Social Security, even though they're supposed to have been coming from a trust somewhere that has been totally pillaged. So it's you can see this decline, and that definitely gets in the way of people taking control over their lives. And again, not in an NPC standpoint, but it's also just a connection to you as a human being. What are we, you know, how do you really experience that life to its fullest? Well, as I said in the opening, what was my biggest takeaway with the 40th birthday party? It wasn't, hey, did everybody bring me a card? Is there a gift certificate somewhere in those cards? No, it was about look at all the family here. Look at all these young cousins running around playing with each other. Look at all of the elder statesmen of the family and these middle generations. And that is the closest to heaven on earth I could have gotten. Yeah. And more and more government gets involved, especially more and more hindrances are put in between people and those moments with family, especially if it's their children, it's their house, they're hosting Christmas this year. I mean, though, that is really it. And so there's a lot to be said on that front for sure.
Yeah, it's weird. There's a turn that I don't want the Zoomers to take, because they're taking so many of the right messages from the errors of the last few generations, specifically the religious reawakening and flushing into Catholic churches. Like 2024 was unprecedented in modern history for how many young men came back into the Catholic Church. That's awesome. But don't do so while ignoring while vilifying all liberty as license, all ordered uses of freedom as disordered uses of freedom, and that's a whole show. That, I mean, look, I'm not a classical liberal, but I'm a Thomist, and we like liberty, and we don't want like big government conservatism. That's a whole other thing that seems to be getting mixed up in a religious reawakening by the Zoomers, and I don't like that any more than you do. But I think the correction, the medicine is in. I think they'd see. I don't know how you make enough money to live off one income. I mean, I managed to do it, but even when I was in California, just being a teacher. But I think the biggest corrective is by telling them. I look at the Zoomers; they're a special generation with a lot of talent. I look at a guy like Fuentes, who I think is a really sincere, good guy, and I've gotten to know him some. Really strikes me as sincere and good, and even when he's mouthy, I see the humanity. I see the whatever. I see the actually a kind of genteelness you don't see in a lot of the rest of the online world, or even the Zoomers. And people will say, "What are you talking about?" He yelled the F word. Well, people say that there too. I see a lot of patience and genteelness and willing to try to understand people, and that other people will look at with someone like Fuentes. And I just want Zoomers of that mold to understand that if you get married, you can still live. I mean, like, we're on summertime here. Like, we're lucky enough to have gotten the switch too. Like, with a wife and kids, it doesn't have to be a lot different from hanging out with your college friends, except it's a lot more intimate, and everyone's just sitting around waiting for their turn on the switch. We got a 9-person family, 4 Switch controllers. Basically two of them aren't old enough to play. Abby can't use her hand that way. Penn's too young. But it's like 7 people waiting to get in on the Switch. We got a system for bottom 2 people that get knocked out on this new knockout mode on Mario Kart World. They go out, the next 2 come in, and we're just doing that for hours, watching movies, going to church, going to confession. You get done what you have to get done, and then you're just enjoying the family. And we're even probably up far too late. But whose standard is that? I just want people to know you don't just have to be some NPC. Once you get a family, when you're a family, that's the beautiful part about being a man. You do it your way. You meet a girl that wants to do it your way. You have that, Frank. I have that. I want other people to see that. Like, don't uncouple being married and being a good Christian, a good Catholic. Like, it's really important that these talented young we need talented people getting married. We don't just need marriage to be the domain of the mediocre or something. That's a false dichotomy. I don't want them making this false equation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that, and I don't know. I really appreciate the time that you. It's been a long time since I've been on your channel. Of course, I'm not. I'm a little bit coming from a standpoint of. I think I'm a little bit more on the level of some of your audience members. I'm not. I can't really have a very in-depth conversation about theology or anything like that. So I'm a little more of an everyman on this. But obviously, we're all been on a very distinct journey, and there's a mark. We're marking our way along the years that we've known each other, and I've definitely come to understand a lot more in the last 5 years alone, a lot more. And the easy thing is that you can see the references and the proofs around you just in the real world, in nature. Sometimes, most of the time, it is all very natural law in that respect, and I don't know. I just appreciate it. I really do. We got to talk about sometimes too. We got to talk about creative writing, because I'll tell you, I've been waiting. I'm trying so hard to get this guy. Well, I was trying to get this guy Ralph Sarie on the show. He was an old New York City detective or a sergeant, I forget, but he was also a demonologist, and he actually accompanied and assisted Malachi Martin on quite a bit of those those spiritual battles in New York City. I've heard him interviewed on Coast to Coast and all that stuff. And I finally found him, but he doesn't do interviews anymore. But he's trying to link me up with somebody that was writing another Malachi Martin book. And I started thinking about the conversation that you had. What was your friend's name? Maza?
Ed Maza, yeah.
Ed Maza. That dude. Think about, you want to talk about creative writing and other things that we need to see come out of like Zoomer generations and stuff like that. I would love to see somebody do some kind of a detective novel or a movie where that is based on Malachi Martin as like the exorcist who's also moonlighting as a taxi driver in New York City. Like when I was watching that stream of yours and I heard that Father Martin was driving a cab in New York City, and I started thinking, imagine getting picked up at like 1:45 in the morning and being in a car with that. Even most people probably didn't even know, but damn, like imagine where you can take that story.
I know that's a heck of a story. You texted me this and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And did you ever have Ed on your show about this? You were so psyched up about this. You were asking about Ed. He's a really good guy. You should have him on.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to, because here's the other thing. You want to talk about the generations and how religion was burned out or was in some way bastardized and co-opted to be able to serve the state. For all the people who say separation of church and state, no, they just want the state to absorb the church so that the church supports the state in their own little way. I don't know if you had seen Conclave yet. Did you watch it yet?
No, I didn't. I've been told to watch. You were like the third friend of mine that told me that you got to go watch it. And then the ending, which got leaked, made me. I was about to start it, and then the ending really turned me off. But I should still watch it, I guess.
Oh, I would go off on it right now if it wasn't going to be a spoiler. I would go off on it because I was having a really interesting. I knew nothing about this. I knew nothing about this movie. I just knew, okay, a pope dies. And it's just supposed to be some kind of like a Vatican thriller of how, Vatican political thriller, because I don't know how anybody would ever think that getting, hundreds of men together to be able to do, secret elections, that there aren't going to be camps and there's not going to be, all this deal making and stuff like that to be able to elect to say it would be devoid of politics would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking, okay, I'm going to sit back. Maybe I'll learn a little bit of something about the process, and we'll see how it's depicted. When I saw what the hell happened, though, oh my!
At the end, you mean?
At the end,
yeah, yeah. It's ridiculous.
Has anybody in your chat room talked about it? It's old at this point, but I just.
Yeah, you guys can mention in the chat. I know. Yeah, I was getting texted a lot about it a few months ago, but I don't know. It's ridiculous. It's like you want to say it, but you don't want to say it because it's breaking, but not breaking.
Yeah. Whenever you watch it, let me know. But I will say one thing about it. Here, the reason why I wanted to bring it up right now, at least in part, is because of Stanley Tucci, because of who that Stanley Tucci's character is in this movie. You just have this, it's just hilarious because it's just Stanley Tucci in a red Zucchetto. That's all it is. Just a cosmopolitan, anything goes liberal who likes nice things, that wants to stop the conservative Italian candidate who is essentially just like Cardinal Trump. And the whole thing, it's just, when I looked at that, I was sitting back at the end because at first I was intrigued, and then toward the end I'm just like, this is just, I don't know, man. This is just this is just everything you need to know about the world and how religion is even metabolized by the average NPC moviegoer who only knows anything that they know about religion by the criticisms that are baked into every movie that comes out.
Right.
that's it, about, exclusivity and all this other stuff. I said it's just pablum at this point. I mean, it's in such great cinematic value too. Like I love the interior of these buildings, and I love the camera work and everything else. I'm like, look at all of this production value and zero ability to tell a good story, because you have to filter it all through your crazy worldview that is so much more dogmatic than the people you're trying to demean.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's not.
Exactly. That's so good. That's so. I will watch it. I will watch it, and then we will discuss it, and then we will marvel even more at the wild ending. Also, apropos of nothing aside from the fact that we're talking about the arts, the trailer for Stranger Things 5 dropped today. That was interesting. I was watching that with the daughters and my son and Steph before we came up here. I mean, it goes into the time thing. Stranger Things 1 came out 9 years ago today. Just where does the time go, man? I don't know. Do we have super chats? Could we?
Yeah, I don't know how much time Frank has left, but we have a few super chats, and there was just some questions as well.
We can go for a few more minutes. I'm good with that.
Okay,
cool.
Wolfgang gave $100.
Oh wow!
Off
Thanks,
topic.
Wolfgang.
But I love how Catholic tradition reclaims what was meant for evil. Could you guys give a quote, "Keep your rifle by your side" by Hope Country Choir a listen? It was meant to mock Christians, but it kind of hits as a Catholic battle hymn. Curious what you think. Oh, we'll have to look into that.
Keep your rifle by your side.
By Hope Country Choir.
Yeah. I remember that. That was when that started getting around. When that started getting around, it started catching fire for all the wrong reasons, and it started getting embraced by the people that it was meant to kind of like criticize. And I think that it actually caused they got a little salty about it too. I haven't heard it in a while, but I remember that getting around.
Yeah, like it was written ironically, and then the other side was taking it non-ironically, but it was still post-ironic because they knew that it was intended ironically, and they were taking it post-ironically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it wasn't in the what is it? It was a video game, right?
That makes sense. That makes so much sense. I'm going to go listen to it.
Yeah. Another super chat from Wolfgang says, Memento Mori is an additional layer of protection against presumption.
That's true. What's to me the Teflon against presumption? I presume I'm going to heaven, and it's like, if you remember your death, then you're not going to presume baselessly that you're going to heaven. It's go to confession often, and every confession is a promise. We all have flaws. We all have things we struggle with, but you are making a promise. You're going to do your very best to stop struggling with those things, or to at least not repeat vices. And, all you can do is try. And if you do repeat the mortal sin after sincerely promising not to, just go to confession again, 7 times, 77 times. So, but I mean, this is why it's good to have one confessor. I don't know how you feel about this, Frank, and I don't just have one, but it's good to have one, because that extra layer of shame, if you're repeating one sin too much, I don't have this come up anymore. I'm always worried about detraction, because I'm never sure about the Catholic Church's detractionary definition, what counts as true gossip. It kind of sounds like you can't say anything. That's the only one I really, really repeat a lot anymore. I used to repeat more sins, but it's the best Teflon. I don't know how you feel about how repeating sins in confession, Frank.
My favorite confessor, he was just transferred out right after he married Lauren and I in last May. He was the pastor of our church, and he got transferred out, not too far away, but just over the bridge, and I haven't seen him since then. And haven't had anybody like him since, because the conversations were so good. And that's what I was, that was when I actually, when confession actually changed for me in a big time. I remember, when I had my first confession, and 1991, 1992, something like that. It was just like, okay, well, I'm just itemizing all the fights I had with my brother. I didn't listen to my mom. And sometimes I would just say things. I needed to go to confession with some sins. But now over the last couple of years, it really has just been about, I gotta go hash this out. And it's almost like, some people go to their therapist. Well, I feel like I'm going to therapy, but with somebody who is not going to prescribe me a drug and actually believes in God. And it's been good in that respect. As far as finding somebody to replace, really fill the shoes of the confessor I had about 1.5 years ago, it's been tough. And some of them, I'll tell you, Tim, I know we've had these conversations too, and I've really accepted this as my own personal belief as well. I think that confession is so much more important now than anything else. Like there is masses that I will skip even receiving communion because I'm not in a headspace for it. But I will still have gone to confession, and I do that so much more often now. At the same time, there have been moments I'll get into the booth and I feel like I just went through the McDonald's dollar menu and I was just like, was that real? I'm trying to, get something off my chest and have some counsel. Like, can you give me a little counsel? I know that there's a small line forming out there, but it was, sometimes the priests, you just know when they're giving you canned remarks. Yeah. They give you 3 Hail Marys as a penance, and then it's just you're out the door. And I don't feel absolution. I don't even feel like he heard me. There's a, I don't know. That's just one of those things. I've had those instances before.
When it depends if there's a line. I'm sympathetic if they're doing the line and it's their hour on Friday afternoons and they have to get to the other people. Like I get their thing, but if it's like, I like to just make an appointment and go in for confession in case we need to talk about something. I also don't like lines. I also like VIP treatment. So I'll just call my priest up and be like, can I come in?
Yeah.
We have to talk. Yeah. There's no excuse if you're going for confession / spiritual direction, which I don't think, I don't think need to be like directed apart. I think they can be the same thing. Then yeah, that's inexcusable. If you got a son, spiritual son that's wanting spiritual direction and there's no line out the door, it's like, what are you doing, man? I don't know what a lot of these churches are doing with having the only an hour a week of confession anyway. They're not emphasizing you need to be going. They see their communion lines, they're full, and they know what they know that they're not even filling an hour a week of confession. Like, you really shouldn't. I don't go receive communion unless I do confession at the Mass. You can do it during the Mass, at the Latin Mass, that's traditional, or right before the Mass. I don't really go to get communion at a Novus Ordo anyway. But yeah, I don't know who feels comfortable receiving communion unless you went like right before the Mass, just because I never want to desecrate it.
Yeah, I know. And I guess more directly to the point of what had been asked about, repeating things. That's really what it comes around to, is that I had somebody I was going to regularly, and I can have conversations who actually knew. It's almost like you go to the doctor, they can take out your chart. Yeah. And they have the family history and all that stuff, and they understand what you're working on and how to hold you accountable as well. But to also just realize that, accountability is huge. A certain level of shame, I mean, that's just a natural indicator for anybody to know, okay, I've got something that I am doing habitually that does not leave me feeling proud of myself. And I know it's got to change. You need that. Shame is very important. But at the same time, if, every time you get into the booth, it's a new priest, you almost feel like, I don't know, you can say the same things with a little bit less shame, I think.
Yeah.
Because they don't know you.
Right.
So that's why I think like if you have that person, if you can build a relationship, I think it's most important. I really do.
Me too.
Two more questions, if you don't mind. I'll just read them right now so you guys can kind of just spitfire them. But one, people were asking about remarriage, like the people whose wives die early, what you guys think about that. And then Veritas, who does beautiful artwork, so I encourage all Catholics to check out his stuff. He had a good comment, and he just said, heaven is a stumbling block for me. I think about it too much, like the human creature that I am. I want to stay in this place with my wife and kids as things are, and yet time trudges on. And Tim and I talk a lot, and you guys did today too, but this we talk about so much. Mm-hmm. But anyway, on the wives passing away early or whatever. Interesting.
Yeah, this is one of those ones. I'm curious what you'll say, Frank, because people get triggered when I tell them, like, look, I mean, like I said, I hope Steph and I go like the same day when we're 80. I don't need to be like 150 the way some people want to live really old, but 70 to 80, we go on the same day. Once we've raised our kids together, the mission's done, because I just don't like being away from her for an hour or whatever. Again, that ain't normie shit. Normies don't like being around their wives, which is why they're coming up with excuses to do motorcycle boomer trips on the weekend with their guys and golf trips. I like being around Steph. I don't like being away. And if something happens to cut the time short, then I'm good. I'm okay with celibacy. And there's a natural grace to testosterone dropping anyway for old men, so we're not all dirty old perverts. I'm fine with celibacy because I want to only have been married once. It's very important for me. And people get triggered by that. Like Catholics are like, oh, you're making too much of it. I'm like, well, I'm the one that's going to walk my walk. If my wife were to die, I have no interest, zero interest in getting into it. Like, I've done it. I only want one of these. And I know death would in that case, dreadful hypo doth done us part, but I don't want split loyalties that way. God willing, if there is some sort of special relationship between former spouses in heaven, I know you're not married in heaven, but I don't want to have a special relationship with two women, a quasi, marriage special relationship in heaven with two women. So I'm good. And it's weird how many Catholics that triggers. Maybe it's a LARPy trad thing or what. I don't know what your view is on that, or if you're comfortable talking about it. But I
never thought, honestly, I haven't given it a lot of thought, because whenever the idea of living without Lauren, if that ever crossed my mind, if I watch a movie or anything that makes me empathize or sympathize with a character that's in a situation where they lose a spouse, or people in our lives who are widows or widowers or whatever, you just take time and you sympathize with some things, and you try those shoes on for a moment, and it just fills me with so much dread. I don't even like thinking about it.
No, neither do I. It turns my second off.
The point, as far as technically, that's just an emotional thing. Yeah. I don't see, if it's death do us part, and somebody dies, and then I wouldn't be like, okay, well, it's been a couple of months, I'm gonna go hit up the local watering hole and see what I can take home. Yeah. It's more so like, I would not be thinking about it. I would not be prioritizing it. And if 25 years down the line, if you fall in love, what are you supposed to? How do you block yourself from falling in love with somebody? And if it's a really good thing, I don't know. I don't give it any thought. But I guess the whole thing is, when you make a vow, you follow through on your end, and then who knows where life takes you down the other way. But I would be totally fine and not never having to go and date or be a part of that world ever again, especially with everything I'm seeing. I just feel like it would be a lot less stress. I'm always open for friends, though.
Yeah, of course. And I wasn't trying to reverse the judgment arrow. I just said it's weird because good Catholics, will get, if they get widowed or widowered, I've noticed, because they're good people, they can meet other good people. If they have a community, they'll tend to get remarried really quickly. And that's fine. That's I'd say the more Catholic way. but there's a sort of condemnation by tradier types of saying what I'm saying. Like, what do you think you're married? No, it's not that. I just so I wasn't trying to reverse that. It's kind of like
personal thing. I don't. Again, it's a personal thing. I know the difference between secular Jiffy Lube divorces that you can go get versus an annulment and all the other things that go along with that. I understand the rules, but if it's a personal thing, I understand. I have a next door neighbor. She lost her husband about, I don't know, almost like 3-4 years ago now. Even if she weren't in her 80s at that point, even if she were in her 50s, 60s, and 70s, I know just culturally and who she is, she would just be wearing the black for her life. That's just what it is.
That's good. I'm just going to, if Tim goes before me, I'm just going to throw myself in his coffin and then they could just lower it down.
That's it. Go down, make myself comfortable right here.
I'll be wearing black forever, live with cats. That's me.
I just can't deal with it, man. I can't deal with it. I can't.
A lot of people are probably on that level. And you know what? I would say right now I'm on that level too, where I don't want to think about it to the point where, I have no interest. But you just don't. Who knows? It's not you're out of pocket.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot thing. It's just my morbid mind goes there. So it goes with all this aging stuff and suffer, sin, suffering, sickness, death. It's a hell of a cost. Thanks a lot, Adam and Eve. To have to wrestle with these questions just because Adam and Eve couldn't get their shit together. But particularly Eve. It's like, dude, get your woman under control. It's Eve. Eve sinned first, so we all have to die. That's a direct quote from St. Jerome. It's like that, thanks a lot. I just resent the shit out of Eve and Adam. It's like, dude, you couldn't get your woman under control. Couldn't tell her STFU, don't talk to serpents at the door. Hey, and then we have to deal with all this fucking shit. You know
what? The Washington administration violated the Constitution. Okay. Yeah. The Washington administration violated the Constitution. So it's just, you want to talk about first generation f-ups. Listen, it's just our way. I guess just the way it is.
I know, man. What was the other question, Steffi?
Oh, I think it was just on that. Honestly, even just the thought of our coffins being in separate areas bothers me. It's but I just don't even like that. A foot away from one another. I'm just I hate the idea of even that alone.
Just
that.
Stack them.
Just stack them. Or just open up the coffin and throw me in at one point. That.
I don't know how. I mean, it's the hell of a cost for sin. I'll just repeat that. You get so close that you become like leave and cleave. The other part of this Bible verse, leave and cleave, is what's the other one? The one flesh part. Mm-hmm. And you become one. You try not to be some doucher divorcee. You try your whole life to follow the rules, and it's wow, this works wonderfully if you actually follow the rules. Not a normie, but not a weirdo. Married, I enjoy it with all of Steph's flaws, with all of my flaws, many though they are. It's wow, we have our 20-year anniversary on August 6th. Frank, did you know that? Me and Steph.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So there's another thing. It's just been a year and a half of just thinking of all this stuff. And it's if assuming that, one of the few things I'm really good at, I was a pretty good white basketball player, but I was only 6 feet. And that was sort of a disappointment how that goes. I guess whatever. I got okay at I was always pretty good at being a student out of books, reading and writing. But the thing I'm the best at is just being a married guy and taking good care of my wife and kids. That's all I ever really wanted to do. And it's you do that, and then you're just, even though you understand the stakes of the game, thank you very much, Adam and Eve. Thanks a lot. It's at any time that could be ripped from you. It's tough. Yeah. So what?
No, I always think the same way as you. I want to thank real quick, Matt, for giving us a $200 super chat, by the way.
Thanks, bro.
Heck, wow.
Matt, you demand. We got a couple of crazy super chats today. $100 Wolfgang, $200 Matt. You guys are real ones. Thank you so much. Maybe we could talk about that on the locals only. I know Frank probably has to get going, but maybe we could talk about it on the locals only show. Just
we'll go
some of
to
our
the
reflections of 20 years. Marriage.
Yeah,
so.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, thanks, Frank. It's always good. It's always good talking to you, man. We always have these Frank talks, no pun intended. And it's crazy. It's great. Life's a crazy thing. And now you're in the this is 40 Club. And you're the main guy I wanted to talk to about this. I've had these thoughts and feelings percolating since I turned 40, and I'm like glad not to be there alone,
Well, these are the conversations I can't wait for. What is it? I think next week, I think next Thursday, I have you and Jay Dyer on to talk. I can't wait. I like those nuts and bolts kind of conversations, but these right here, like when we start talking about family and our personal, I mean, there's so many other things here we can do, but these are the ones that just last with people. Because sometimes when you talk about things that are so ethereal and it could almost be like trying to break down formulas, calculus, and sometimes it's just like, boom, okay, I got it. Okay, that finally makes sense. But when we're talking about family and we're talking about fears and we kind of humanize everything a little bit, there's a great lowering of the walls and the protections that we put up, and it's all right to kind of embrace those fears every once in a while, the nostalgia and things. And I think there's a lot more to be gained in those conversations. Everybody's got to have more of them. So thanks for inviting me on. I can't wait to do another one with you, to be honest.
Yeah, I love you, bro. And I can't wait to do one with you. The one with Jay is a non-debate, right? Because me and Jay are doing the follow-up debate on Elijah. And we're doing, what time are we doing that stream? Your normal evening, 6 p.m. for me, is it?
What on July 24th?
Yeah, on July 24th.
You guys are doing a debate later that night?
No. We're doing a follow-up debate in probably August the 22nd, live in person on a friendly one. Like Jay and I like each other, but he's Orthodox, I'm Catholic. On Elijah Schaefer.
Okay, no. This is going to be just normal, and it's not a debate. I have very specific line of questions for both of you guys on conditions for the reconciliation between the Orthodox and Catholic Church. Like what would those conditions be? Who would have to compromise on what? And very specific questions I have on salvation, and that's really it. I want to see. It's not a debate. I just have a few questions that popped up for me. Actually, along the way, I watched most of what you did on Tim Pool's show weeks back, and I thought that I said, okay, well, let me write some stuff down and get you guys on. That'll be fun. That's the 24th.
That'll be good. Yeah, the 24th of next Thursday. So, well, I look forward to it, bro. Always good to have you on, and be well. Our best to Lauren and Aurora, and you might see the whole fam again in September.
Oh man,
extravaganza.
Oh man, that would be nuts if you're. That would be really, really amazing. All the best to you guys. All of our love to all of you down there and to the chat room. It's been a wonderful chat. I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. Peace. All right. And hey, locals. We're doing our locals only thing right now. We'll be talking more. If you want to, in the locals chat or the locals box, where we normally interact, you can ask questions. I'll probably be talking about the stuff we're going deep on today.
I don't know if we have, we're going to have a Frank pieced out, by the way. So that was a great show. Everybody really loved that show. But I don't know if we have the capability to go live with the locals right now, because that didn't work as well last time. But I'm trying to think how they could answer.
They could ask them in locals right now on the
so guys, if you have questions about like our 20 years of marriage, there's a post right now about the Tim show on reflections on aging and getting old. There's a post that Tim did. Just ask your questions there, and I'll try to, if you put those in right now, I'll try to answer all of those questions. If you just add your questions onto that post, reflections on aging and getting old. So thanks again.
Peace. Des Vol.